It's summertime, everyone, and it's time to get outside into the bright sunshine. And speaking of sunshine, do you know what vitamin is called the sunshine vitamin? Well, since you read the title and thumbnail of this video, you'll know that it is vitamin D. We need 600 to 1,000 IU, that's international units, of vitamin D a day. But does that mean that I have to expose myself to harmful UV rays to get it? I don't want to increase my chances of getting cancer, but what'll happen to me if I don't get enough vitamin D? Hey everyone, I'm Nikki. Today we're going to talk about vitamin D. What is it? Why do we need it? How is it related to COVID possibly? And how we get enough of it? So what is vitamin D? Well, what are vitamins? Vitamins are organic compounds or molecules. And this is as opposed to minerals, which are inorganic. So vitamins are carbon-based and minerals are generally not carbon-based. For vitamin D, there are two forms. There's D2 that you can get from yeast and plants, and D3 that you can get from fatty fish, eggs, fortified milk, or supplements. But the main source of vitamin D3 is produced when our skin is exposed to ultraviolet B rays, that's UVB. So it's not like the sun's rays are shooting vitamin D into our skin, but rather UVB rays help to convert a vitamin D precursor to the active form of vitamin D. And we all need vitamin D. It helps with bone growth because it keeps your bones strong by helping you absorb calcium, which is a mineral, an inorganic compound that builds and maintains bones. It helps with blood clotting, muscle contraction, and it helps our hearts to beat. So calcium and vitamin D are the two most important nutrients for healthy bones. They're essential for bone health. They prevent people from developing things like osteoporosis. There's also growing evidence that vitamin D helps keep the immune system running properly, which then leads me to talking about vitamin D in the context of current events, those events being a viral pandemic, or at least what seems to be the tail end of a viral pandemic. For a number of years, there were a lot of different studies where vitamin D seemed to show some promise in immunity, specifically respiratory illness, and maybe some antimicrobial and antiviral activity. And at the very least, it's been enough for researchers to continue to study vitamin D in that context. In the early months of the pandemic, researchers noticed that people at high risk of severe illness from COVID-19 were a lot of the same people with vitamin D deficiency, mostly older people, people who were overweight, people with darker skin. A lot of people are actually deficient in vitamin D. According to a paper in 2014, there were about 1 billion people estimated to be deficient in vitamin D, and it's mostly because of not enough exposure to sunlight. Now, what defines deficient depends on who you ask. It really varies a lot between one organization and the next. A study in JAMA in September 2020 looked at 489 patients who had their vitamin D levels measured before the pandemic. They found that there was 1.77 times more risk of testing positive for COVID in patients with deficient vitamin D status compared to those with sufficient vitamin D status. So there seems to be a strong correlation. Another paper looked at vitamin D deficiency in more severe clinical pictures and more serious lung involvement in patients with COVID-19 infections admitted to a hospital. As to whether supplementing with vitamin D helps to reduce severity and mortality of disease, results were inconclusive. A lot of the available evidence only shows a correlation or an association, not causation. And even then, the results are still a bit mixed. Some results show some benefit, others show no benefit at all, depending on what aspect of the virus or viral infection they're actually studying. So nothing truly definitive. Researchers at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine don't believe in advising patients to take vitamin D in order to prevent COVID-19, but rather more for the other health benefits of having enough vitamin D. So what I'm getting from this is that you should just get enough vitamin D to maintain your general health. Also, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to consider the other proven ways of boosting your immune system: eating fruits, eating vegetables, exercise, consume alcohol in moderation, and importantly, get enough sleep. Serendipitously, I have a video about the science behind sleep and ways to get more/better sleep. So watch it if you're having trouble getting that shut-eye. There are some legit good tips in there, and then you can boost your immune system and just be healthier overall. So all of that said, you might now ask, should I expose myself to UV without sunscreen and or supplement with vitamin D in order to get enough? Now, as far as the sunscreen question goes, there are two camps. Those that would forego sunscreen in the interest of getting that vitamin D, and those who use sunscreen no matter what. And of course, most of us are in between. We use sunscreen when we remember, but when we don't, we're kind of like, well, I'm getting my dose of vitamin D. Speaking of that, how much sunlight do you think you actually need to get an adequate amount of vitamin D? The answer is, it depends. People are so different, it really just depends. I've read that 10 to 15 minutes of sun on the arms and legs a few times a week can help you make all the vitamin D you need. But you have to think about the weather, the time of day, where you live, pollution, your age. We produce less vitamin D as we get older. Your skin color. People like me with darker skin have more melanin, which is protective against UV rays. Your sunscreen usage and your health condition. So people who are overweight have lower levels because vitamin D can be diluted into the greater volumes of fat. What you could do is get your baseline levels checked and consult with your doctor. I personally am in the latter camp. I use sunscreen religiously, and I've done so since I was in my 20s. Now, have I never gotten any sun exposure? God, no. Because even though I use sunscreen religiously, I don't use it perfectly. I'm sure I don't always cover all the parts of my skin that are exposed to sunlight. I'm sure I don't reapply adequately. I mean, as much as I may try. Overall, I think I'm pretty good with sunscreen, but I think I'm getting enough exposure to the sun that I'm getting some vitamin D conversion. And I know this because I do get dark when I've been in the sun a bunch, and actually I probably should be more diligent about reapplying that sunscreen, because honestly, I am more afraid of the consequences of prolonged sun exposure, i.e. collagen and elastin destruction, wrinkles, cancer, dark spots. Just kidding, that's a mole. I'm afraid of all of those things more than I'm afraid of vitamin D deficiency. That said, do you or I need to supplement with vitamin D? That is entirely up to our doctors and us. A few months ago, our pediatrician suggested my daughter take a vitamin D supplement. I don't necessarily give it to her every day because there are days when she isn't able to reapply, or she forgets to reapply her sunscreen after school, and then she spends like 2 hours at soccer practice. But if we're not getting a lot of sun for a few days, for instance, like during the winter months, I'll give her a vitamin D supplement. I, on the other hand, have darker skin, and I use sunscreen every single day, so I take a vitamin D supplement nearly every day. One small caveat is that because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, it doesn't dissolve in water, it's best absorbed with high-fat foods, but more importantly, there's a slight chance you can overdose on it. It's extremely rare, but it can actually happen if you overdo it. So just be mindful of that. I actually know somebody who did overdose on it. Apparently there was some, miscommunication about dosing or something like that, and she got really sick. So which camp are you in? Will you use sunscreen this summer, and frankly, forever, and supplement with vitamin D, or will you forego sunscreen and take your chances with cancer? You know how I feel about it. Are there any vitamins or minerals or supplements that you're curious about for which you'd like to see a video explanation? I know some people were curious about NAD, resveratrol, NMN, but just let me know in the comments. If you like learning about how different foods and supplements boost or hinder your health and wellness, watch this video. I cover the science behind what I put in my daily shake, but it's so much more than just shake ingredients. It educates you as to why some of these ingredients are so incredibly important, whether they're in a shake or not. And when you're done with that video, watch this video. It's part 2 of the shake video and really drives home why we need to be mindful and conscientious of the foods that we eat. Otherwise, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please share it with your family, friends, and loved ones. And if you're new to my channel, subscribe if you want to see more. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really, really do appreciate your time, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.